Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove. He knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun, or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer, my gown, my tippet, only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were pointed toward eternity. Dearly beloved, we begin this service with a poem by Emily Dickinson, not only because she was a cherished poet both for Jean and Jerry, but also because it speaks of the grace-filled understanding of embracing death in its time. Jean was a PhD in psychology, and therefore she was profoundly familiar with Erik Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development, the 8th stage of which is integrity versus despair. Both the poem and most certainly Jean are models of mature integrity. Jean possessed a particular quality, one that is critical to living a full life, and one that we need profoundly more of in our world today, especially now. And that quality is to be so mature, so clear about the boundaries of what makes you whole, so centered as opposed to self-centered, that you are able to live fully in community. It's almost paradoxical. To truly be in community, you must be fully yourself. Jean was most assuredly her own self, her own woman. With others of like values, she helped build a strong community. She was part of the glue that held it together, part of the organizing genius that nourished it from birth to maturity. Eric Hendrickson, along with Jean's sister and daughters, will tell us more of this. But let it be known that in the weeks leading up to her death, her community was with her nonstop, to hold her hand, to read to her, simply to be with her. And when it was her time, knowing that death is as much a part of life as birth, she let go into that vast mystery. So we begin her story, and I invite Eric Hendrickson to come forward at this point.
Greetings, friends and family. Jerry, Josie, Jamie, thank you for this opportunity to share my remembrances and lift up our beloved Jean in memory. As with most of us gathered here, Jean lived a life in interesting times, and she made them more so. I suppose we are all products, if not prisoners, of the times into which we are born. Jean embraced the zesty zeitgeist of her time with intention, insight, and integrity. Perhaps you were blessed to have accompanied her on her life's adventures. Some of us knew her through her role as a classmate at Macalester College. In her freshman year, she was a cheerleader for the Scots football team that went 7-3. There'd have been no ignominious 50-game losing streak if Jean had continued to be cheering for that squad. But as a good liberal arts school should, Macalester directed her efforts towards more substantive causes. By her sophomore year, Jean had made an intentional decision to lead a life that mattered, to work for social justice, to be actively anti-racist. She took an exchange program semester at HBCU Knoxville College in Tennessee and subsequently committed her life to the values of justice and community. Jean's formative years were a dynamic, febrile, and complicated time. When she would otherwise have been walking across the graduation stage at Macalester, the school instead had shut down in the wake of protests as Cambodia and the murders at Kent State seared a nation's soul. The emerging youth culture of those years prompted Jean and other like-minded progressive folks to form an intentional living community that became known as Holly House. If the Unitarians amongst you ever visited Bill and Katie Gray at their home, that was the house, 488 Holly. It was an architectural gem. I'll never live in a nicer house. But the magic of that place was the life energy that was generated and flowed from this place. We were idealistic, hoping through collective action to make a troubled world a better place. And I'll tell you what, folks, Jean Henjum was central to that movement. We were the meetingest folks you ever saw. Holly House succeeded because we met, negotiated, and hammered out fair ways to do the basics of day-to-day living. Here's an example. Jean helped address the issue of unbalanced verbal participation in our group by introducing the penny protocol. Each person was given the same number of coins, and each time you spoke, you had to toss one of your pennies into the center of the room. And when the pennies were gone, you were muted. It was time to listen. Jean was also central to the values we had around setting norms for food, for household chores. We held each other to account, and Jean was a formidable force in doing just that. Now, while we were clearly left-leaning in our politics, we were not especially doctrinaire. For most of our 7.5 years there, it was 4 men and 7 women. For a time, on Monday nights, the women would repair to the 3rd floor for a women's consciousness-raising meeting. Think our bodies ourselves. Think diet for a small planet. Us fellas would speculate about what they were up to. We would gather on the 1st floor for a men's consciousness-lowering session as we watched Monday Night Football and drank Fox Deluxe beer, Jerry's favorite, at $2.99 a case. But really, together, collectively, we embraced feminist values, and it was a key reason why this community was successful. The Selby Food Co-op was an important focus for group energy. Some of you may recall this, Selby Food Co-op, and the slogan was, strength through cooperation. Jean made that manifest by taking on the role of a day coordinator, a formidable task. And with her high executive function, she instituted procedures that brought some much-needed structure to a loosely run hippie grocery store. I think it was Jean who, when the city health department forbade the sale of our homemade yogurt, solved the problem by labeling it as cat food. Aww. Protests, marches, neighborhood politics with model cities were all part of the mosaic, but we also had fun. When Bob Douglas, a member of Prairie Home Companions' Powder Milk Biscuit Band, joined the house, a new dimension of great music was added. It was Jean who insisted that fun is political. She was a dandy softball player and an even better competitive bridge player. Jean was a Renaissance woman, a fount of ideas, possessed of a keen wit and a strong work ethic. She was a lover of language and of limericks. She was also a lover of Jerry Flannery, that raw-boned rube from Cleveland who rode in on his motorcycle and stole her heart. As a result, both Josie and Jamie were born while we lived at Holly House. With the arrival of them and other children, we outgrew the space, and it was time to recolonize to a row house on the east side of St. Paul. But we took with us the values of cooperation and working for social justice. We raised our children in this new location, growing food in our gardens, playing volleyball, celebrating life events with the tradition of writing limericks, and singing our hearts out. Ask Marge Ostrushko about Jean's role in helping with the Giving Voice Choir when you have the opportunity. Jean would later serve admirably and ably as McAllister's head of student counseling and health services. At one point, a McAllister administrator inappropriately asked Jean to share confidential student data. It was a watershed moment. And though it would cost Jean her job, she stood up and had the courage of her convictions and protection of the profession as well as her students. It also gave her an opportunity then to join in deeper partnership with Jerry and Flannery Construction. They shared a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and Jean was the driver of this. The company, under Jamie's able leadership, continues to be known and honored for fostering women and BIPOC folks in the construction trades. There are so many stories. Let's continue to tell them. Jean enriched the lives of all who knew her, and her legacy lives on. Keep telling those stories. I close with 2 limericks, as only Jean would appreciate, but I hope you will too. Here they are. Here's a fun fact about Jean. With sharp eyes, she could survey the scene. With a wit wise and jolly, she could tease Holly's folly. She was crowned as our limerick queen. While we'll no longer see your dear face, by your wit and your grit and your grace, your impact is measured by so much that is treasured. You left us a much better place.
bird chirping up in the sky. I'd like to be free like that, spread my wings so high. I see the river flowing, water running by. I'd like to be that river, see what I might find. I feel the wind blowing, slowly changing time. I'd like to be that wind, I swirl and shape the sky. I smell the flowers blooming, opening for spring. I'd like to be those flowers, open to everything. I feel the seasons change, the leaves, the snow and sun. I like to be those seasons made up and undone. I taste the living earth, the seeds that grow within. I like to be that earth, the home where life begins. I see the moon arising, reaching into night. I like to be that moon, unknowing, glowing light. I know the silence as the world begins to wake. I like to be that silence as the morning breaks. I hear a bird chirping up in the sky. I'd like to be free like that, spread my wings so high. I see the river flowing, water running by. I'd like to be that river, see what I might find. Feel the wind blowing, slowly changing time. I'd like to be that wind, I swirl and shape the sky. I smell the flowers blooming, opening for spring. I'd like to be those flowers, open to everything. I'd like to be those flowers, open to everything.
Let all the people say amen. Thank you. No circumstance awakens in us a stranger of whom we would have no suspicion. To live is to be born slowly. It would be too easy to borrow ready-made souls. These words are from French author Antoine de Saint-Exupéry in his book Wind, Sand, and Stars. And they're chosen because they capture a fundamental essence of Jean, some of which Eric so beautifully shared with us. This was a woman who worked at growing into being her own woman, a woman who worked at learning at what it meant to be born slowly, intentionally, and to grow into the soul she wanted to craft. She did not borrow a soul, a ready-made soul, from anyone or anywhere. If we were to think of her life as art, it might be a tapestry that was woven over the course of her life's years, telling her story with a warp and a weft woven tight with strength and with both plain and exotic threads of daily browns and grays and of startling colors that would put the rainbow to shame. Jean was born on the 22nd of July in 1948 in Bird Island, Minnesota. Graduating from high school in 1966, she moved to St. Paul and received her BA from Macalester College, a place that would both shape her career and her lifelong community. In 1971, as we heard from Eric, she and several close friends moved into Holly House, an intentional community largely made up of McAllister graduates. I have to stress, history tells us what happens when people try to live in communal living. It hardly ever works. This worked, and Jean was a huge part of making it work. And it was there in the spring of '72 that Jean met Jerry, who later joined the household. And during their time at Holly House, Jean and Jerry welcomed 2 children, Josie Henjum and Jamie Flannery. Now, a word about the 2 different last names of the children. Although Jean and Jerry are the parents of both of them, Jean and Jerry decided that their respective last names were pretty darn nice and each of them should get one of them, or something like that. But it speaks to both Jean's and Jerry's strength and vision that they agreed that the firstborn, Josie, should carry Jean's surname, thus defying patriarchal cultural norms. And it spoke of their equality, that Jamie should carry Jerry's last name. Now, apparently many of their schoolhood friends couldn't quite figure out why Jamie and Josie had different last names, but the same parents. They worked it through. Later in that same book by Saint-Exupéry, he goes on to write the following, and this is for the daughters. For a mother, a death is only half a death. Each life in turn bursts like a pod and sends forth its seed. When a mother dies, for a second time, the umbilical cord is cut. For a second time, the knot is loosened, the knot that bound one generation to another. And now the mother lies at rest, a vein from which the gold has been extracted. In their turn, her children will bring forth young from the mold. So simple. This image of a generation dropping one by one its members as it makes its way through time and through its metamorphoses towards a trust that is its own. This is life that is handed on here from generation to generation with the slow progress of a tree's growth. Besides her work as a psychologist at both the University of Minnesota and at Macalester College, she was also a mother to many 4-legged furry friends over the years. She welcomed strays, giving them a place of safety and security. And when I met with the family this past week, Jerry pointed out that it wasn't just the 4-legged strays that she welcomed. Hurting souls found her. She reached out to them. She had a way of welcoming them, a way of asking questions so that they might better understand themselves and find their way forward, find their way to wholeness. Being a psychologist isn't something simply that she did. It is who she was in her essence. Her house was a refuge for so many who needed it. And so we return now to Dickinson, a poem titled A Quiet House of Memories. In quiet halls where memories dwell, echoes of laughter, a soft farewell. The walls recall each cherished face. In shadows linger an empty space. Yet through the silence, love remains in every corner. Joy sustains. As echoes fade, they time impart a quiet house, a heavy heart. In retirement, Jean was a devoted mother and grandmother. Georgia and Calvin, she loved the two of you so much. Her love is very much with you right now and always will be. Jean delighted in psychological theory and mystery novels alike, and they're very similar, those two disciplines. She thoroughly appreciated Jerry's excellent cooking and his discerning taste in wine. Together, they traveled the world. In more recent years, Jean enjoyed playing 500 with her Spring Street neighbors, who fondly remember her sparkling, sneaky, competitive game smile. Now, in her obituary, it mentions that she could be quite irreverent. He's nodding. Yeah. I've been a minister for 45 years. And I have found that it is irreverence like Jean's is remarkably sacred in its truth-telling and its honesty. When asked about the ultimate question of life and its meaning, Jean once said, "Let the mystery be." And today we are faced with the mystery of her absence as we continue to exist in her presence and in her love. She wanted to be remembered that she had tread this earth, that she had made a mark, had made a difference. You did it, sister. You really did it. And so these words from Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore: "I have got my leave, bid me farewell, my neighbors. I bow to you all and I take my departure. Here, I give back the keys of my door and I give up all claims of my house. I only ask for last kind words from you. We were neighbors for long, but I received more than I could give. Now the day has dawned, and the lamp that lit my dark corner is out. A summons has come, and I am ready for my journey. At this time of parting, wish me good luck, my friends. The sky is flushed with the dawning, and my path lies beautiful before me. Ask now what I have to take with me there. I start on my journey with empty hands and an expectant heart." And I invite back now the Douglas family.
Life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? Although the tempest loudly roars, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love is Lord of heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble sick with fear and hear their death knells ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear that music ringing. It finds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? Lift mine eyes, the cloud grows thin. I see the blue above it. And day by day this pathway smooths, since first I learned to love it. The peace of God makes fresh my heart, a fountain ever springing. All things are mine since I am His. How can I keep from singing?
Forward at this time, Joan Henjum, Jean's sister.
Just taking a look around to see who you are. Thank you so much for being here and for being a witness to the wonderful and powerful person that Jean was. Jean and I were close our whole lives. We were Irish twins, as she was born less than a year after I was born. Following her, our sister Janet came next, and then soon after that, our brother John. In the family pecking order, Jean and I were the big kids, and Janet and John were the little kids, and that was enforced. About the time that we were 8 or 9 years old, our parents would put Jean and me on the train to go to Siren, Wisconsin to stay with our grandparents for a couple of weeks. It was always hot, which we experienced especially when they put us to work picking strawberries and raspberries in their huge patches. They seemed huge to us anyway. And then Grandpa would take us into town in his old Pontiac pickup to get a treat. He called Jean Mrs. McGillicuddy because she would talk so freely with adults. During the 7 years that we lived in Winsted, Minnesota, our dad owned and published the Winsted Journal. He also ran for the Democratic nomination for the state legislature. Jean or I would go with him and hand out cards to people in bars and cafes. He didn't win, but we all grew up with political awareness, and you could hear, how that resonated throughout her life. Jean was a really good student and whizzed through her classwork, which included Latin, which impressed me, And as was mentioned, she got a PhD in psychology. She had a lot of energy. After the summers of our 9th grade and 10th grade, we would hoe sugar beets and detassel corn to earn money to buy clothes for school for the fall. So in the evenings after all that, I was exhausted and would lay on my bed reading, and she'd go out roller skating with her friends. She was funny as a whip with her quips. During the service when I was ordained, she whispered to my daughter-in-law, Jen, "Pretty churchy, don't you think?" Jean encouraged all of us siblings to do and be what we could in life. She shared learnings from psychology, and including the Myers-Briggs types. And then when she got deeply into Adlerian psychology, she would host four-way phone calls and coach us on our family patterns and propensities. It was cool. And then she was also very open to engaging in learning in programs that I recommended to her. You can hear that Jean was deeply caring of people that she was close to. When their next-door neighbor in the row house on Eichenwald, Bob DeBoer, was in hospice, and Bob was the father of the people that are singing here today, she kept 11 of us friends informed via email about what was going on. A few years back, I got sick during a time when I was really busy and working on writing and just trying to work through being sick. And she wrote me this email. "I think rest and relaxation and recovery, family and housekeeping are the most important things right now. They can be meditative for your writing activities. Your family needs you to get healthy. Your communities do too. Can you let go of ambition and learning and striving for a bit? You are good enough the way you are right now." Heart, heart. Jean's love and generosity to Janet and John, they could tell you their stories, but here's one big story from me. When I was 19 years old, in 1966, I got pregnant. And at that time, good Catholic girls didn't do that. My father was incensed, and Jean was my only support. I had to go into hiding. I lived with a family that had 6 kids and took care of them. And then Jean would pick me up on my day off, and we'd go do something fun. Once I had the baby, I gave him up for adoption, and I went back to school. Fast forward 35 years, and I did a search for my son. And found out that he too wanted to connect. And so we're in Seattle, and so my kids and I and Chris, we got on the plane and flew here, and of course we were hosted at the Eichenwald Suites Palace, and as we always were. And that week I met Bob, I met Lori, and their son Matt, and we really hit it off, and we have been ever since, and they're sitting right there. And Jean and Jerry, at the end of that week, they hosted a huge celebration at their place with all of our relatives. And a few years ago, Jean made this book for me. It's called Joan's Story, and she's got pictures from our life, and then she's got pictures from that gathering, that special gathering. There's a lot more in here, but I'll just show you this. But she really, she made a big deal of it, and it was a big deal, and she gave this as a gift to me. In this past year, as Jean was fading, still she would ask me, how are Bob and Lori? How are they doing? So she never stopped caring. This past year, I saw Jean 3 times. They visited us, Jerry and Jean visited us in Seattle for a few days. And then in July, I was here and stayed with Jean and Jerry. And then in December, I came to visit her at the recovery center, the rehabilitation center. And while I was there, shortly before she died, I read her this poem by Raymond Carver. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what was it that you wanted? To call myself beloved, to know myself, to feel myself beloved on the earth. Jean is eternally beloved. Amen.
Thank you for, okay. Thank you for being here to honor my mom and to surround us with your love. You've heard from Eric and Joan, Aunt Joan, about my mom's earlier years and the community she created. Thank you both. I don't know where Eric is, but thank you both for being willing to speak. Thanks to the Douglas family for singing. I think we're doing her justice. My mom, Jean, she was values-driven and generous with the abundance in her life. Her time, her experience, her love. Couple that with her enviable ability to work in a hilarious quip or an irreverent one-liner, and she was truly a force to be reckoned with. As I try to capture Jean's spirit and impact on those around her, again and again, I come back to the idea that she always made me feel seen and understood. In talking to my dad, he said that she had a deep knowing of him and was a beacon of hope during tough times. I think this is who she was to many people. I'm trying to move a little bit just to like shake out the I like the jumping jacks in back. That's helpful. I think this is who she was to many people. It captures her essence, the essence of her spirit and influence, her deep knowing. At Flannery Construction, she was a remarkable leader whose guidance, values, and dedication help shape who we are as a company today. Jean led an effort to write down our values, our principles, put them on paper and communicate them, be held accountable to them, and embody them. She was also known for her great sense of humor. Her influence leaves a lasting imprint on our culture, our people, and the principles we strive to uphold every day. A dear friend to many, she was wise and willing to share the lessons of her experience in pragmatic and helpful ways, providing a calm sounding board, offering advice and solutions, or reframing an experience to see it in a different light or from a different angle. She was devoted to the people that she loved, my dad, my sister, me, her grandchildren, her family, her dogs, her friends, her home, her community. As a mom, she was always willing to help me with anything, from thinking through a complex problem to offering emotional support to helping me move houses and organize my kitchen. She taught me healthy boundaries and was willing to talk about how she learned them, because she didn't totally grow up with them. And she was so funny. Sparkling wit and a contagious sense of humor were her calling card. If it's funny, say it, was one of her taglines, and she lived by it. The thing about that rule is it means sometimes she said things that you were not supposed to say out loud and in public with perfect timing. She had a gift for noticing exactly what everyone else was politely thinking, and then skipping the polite part and saying it out loud in public. Sometimes that got her into trouble, but really sometimes it got us into trouble, like the time she almost got me beat up at Target. But much more often, it made moments unforgettable and hilarious. Well, that was unforgettable and hilarious, so even still. A lot of my mom's best humor lived in those moments. She never missed a beat. And while it is probably best for everyone that I don't repeat too many of them today, I know that so many of you can hear her chirp in your head right now. If it's funny, say it, was her way of reminding us not to take ourselves too seriously. It was part of how she made things more honest, and how she stayed just a little bit outrageous and completely herself. More recently, we have experienced a hard season due to her dementia, a cruel disease by any definition. Throughout the caretaking journey over the last several years, Jean's smile, wit, humor, and yes, her opinions shone through. During her final weeks, my mom always lit up when she saw us. She especially lit up when she saw my dad. The nursing staff frequently commented on how sweet they were together. Jerry would say things like, "Take good care of my bride." And mostly, they would sit quietly and hold hands. She felt calm with him. She felt safest with him. A friend described this as time out of time. So challenging, drawing on every strength that you have. And you know you need to be right there in the midst of it. It's a sacred time. Thank you so much to everyone who showed up in these last few weeks and months. Thank you to all of the people who supported Jerry, Josie, and me so that we could be fully present in her final days. Thanks, Drew. When I think about everything my mom was, her deep knowing, her fierce love, her honesty, her humor, what it really added up to was this: you always knew where you stood with her. Behind all of the jokes and perfectly timed comments was an unshakable, steady presence. I want to leave you with a quote by Jojo Moyes that embodies the spirit of who my mom was to me. Even if the whole world was throwing rocks at you, if you had your mother at your back, you'd be okay. Some deep-rooted part of you would know that you were loved, that you deserved to be loved.
That was Jamie. She's amazing. I'm Josie. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Joan and Eric and George, for speaking so lovingly about Jean. Douglas family, that was just so beautiful. It reminded me of my wedding, and just so lovely. Over these past months, as Mom spent her final days in hospice, we were surrounded by you, friends, family, and neighbors showing up for her, and showing up for Jerry, Jamie, and I as we navigated the tricky and heart-wrenching path of dementia, caregiving, and hospice. We lost Jean on December 23rd, but the truth is, dementia had been slowly changing our lives for several years before that. I want to tell you a little bit about that, but first, I'll talk about who my mom really was to me, because that dementia doesn't define her story. I'm not the first one to say my mom lived with intention. I think you got it. As you heard in Eric's remembrance, she chose to be a part of a lifelong community, brought Jerry into it, and raised us in that community. You heard she was passionate about making psychology accessible to everyone through her work with Myers-Briggs Type Indicator. I know at least some of you took that test because of her. And later with Adlerian teachings. If you are one of the many people who felt truly seen by my mom, her commitment to this work and her kind heart are why you felt that. She was so knowledgeable. She loved to read. She read multiple newspapers every day. Before our vacations, we used to make a family trip to the bookstore and each buy a big stack of books. Sometimes we had to bring an extra suitcase just for books. My mom taught me some of my most valuable lessons. She taught me I can't control what other people do, but I can always control my own reaction. She taught me the small things that trigger a strong reaction are usually rooted in something about me, not about the other person. And she said almost every mistake or offense can be cleaned up by acknowledging the mistake, apologizing, and committing to acting differently. I'm guessing she had plenty of practice with that one in 50 years of communal living. So in the past few years, dementia slowly and painfully began to take pieces of her from us. At first, the losses were small, like when she stopped being a superfan at Georgia and Calvin's games and stopped hosting family gatherings. It felt like she lost interest in us, and it hurt. But in hindsight, the activity, schedule, and complexity of these events had already become too much for her. Eventually, the phone conversations got hard. She would change the subject while I was talking, or suddenly say goodbye and hang up. And this is something people usually say after a loved one passes, but I remember reaching for my phone to call her and then putting the phone down because I realized I couldn't call her anymore. And this was years ago. There were other goodbyes too. We said goodbye to the fashionista, a traveler, to a fun dinner companion, to her social circle, and to the heart of our family. She became more anxious and distractible as she got lost, driving to familiar places, and couldn't always tell the difference between real life and her crime shows, Elsbeth and Blue Bloods. Some of you dear friends told us you worried you'd done something wrong when you lost touch with Jean, or felt you could have tried harder to get together. But I want you to know it wasn't you. Social situations had simply become too much for her, and she loved you all until her last day. This past October, everything accelerated. On October 18th, Jean fell at home and broke her hip. After surgery and rehab, complications left us no choice but to start hospice care. The trauma, change of environment, and anesthesia were just devastating for her dementia. All of her context clues were gone. She was frightened and disoriented, so we made sure someone was with her all day, every day. And from the bottom of our hearts, thank you to those of you who visited Jean. But even in all this sadness, Jean's wit, humor, and love shined through. Once she asked Jamie, "Who's going to write my obituary?" And Jamie said, "I guess Josie and I will." And Jean said, "Oh, okay. But you know some good writers, too." I thought it turned out good. And she still loved Iris DeMent, John Prine, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. She loved her visitors and wanted us there all the time, especially Jerry. Her eyes lit up with love every time she saw him. I saw it. So as I was writing this speech, I really missed Jean's editing. She was a phenomenal editor. I really wanted her help to wrap up these sentiments with a tidy conclusion or some kind of a takeaway. What I can say is that in the end, when so many memories had faded, love remained. She knew Jerry. She knew Jamie and me. And she knew she was surrounded by people who loved her. And she still lit up at music, sweetness, and familiar voices. And that feels like its own kind of wisdom, that at the core of everything, what lasts is love. And we will miss her deeply.
During Jean's years here at this church, she sang in the choir. She loved the choir, and many choir members have joined together this day to be able to give a final offering to her, so I invite them forward at this time. Now this final blessing by Jan Richardson. Beloved, I could not bear it if this blessing ended with the final beat of your heart. If it left with the last breath that bore you away from here. I could not stand the silence, the stillness, where all had once been song, had been story, had been the cadenced liturgy of your life. So let it be that this blessing will abide in the pulse that moves between us from this moment to the next. Let it be that you will breathe in us here bereft, but beloved still. Let it be that you will make your home in the chamber of our heart, where your story does not cease, where your words take flesh anew, where your song begins again. So be it. And amen. The service is ended. I ask the choir to be seated now. And she knows the timeout signal. This minister forgot to announce the reception. You are all invited to the St. Paul Hotel now. The family will greet you there. A time to share stories, to share love, to share comfort in your grief, and to greet the family. Thank you, and go in peace. Hit it.